the Department of Commerce and the Department of Interior, and there's so much that we can do, but we have to be willing to cut. We have, in the world today, a sovereign debt crisis. That's what's happening. The nations of the world, including us, although our dollar is still perceived to be a decent currency and people are still loaning us money, but it's a sovereign debt crisis. It involves our states, our communities. Just recently, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania declared bankruptcy and just wrote their debts off the books. Greece has way too much debt, and they're going to be wiping it off the books. But there's a big struggle in Europe right now. They're not worried about the Greeks and the people there. They're worried about the people in Europe who bought Greek bonds, and they're on the books, and there are billions of dollars worth of these bonds. So now the whole effort is to bail out the banks. And guess what? We're involved in those discussions. As I said, we already sent $5 trillion over there to settle the markets in 2008, so we'll be involved. But the big problem is a debt crisis, sovereign debt. And we, as the issuer of the reserve currency, after the gold standard broke down in 1971, for some weird reason, the world kept taking our dollars as if they were still as good as gold. And we were, very wealthy, and we were still very productive, and that has all changed. But it made it very tempting just to export dollars, buy from overseas. Then we didn't have to produce much here as long as they took our dollars. And that we did for a long time, but that has come to an end. But when they took our dollars, they put it in the bank and bought our treasury bills, and they held those dollars in reserves, so they inflated their currency against dollars instead of against gold. So they have all inflated, and inflation means the building and pyramiding of debt. And this is what's happening around the world. I don't know of one country that's going to be exempt. A country like China, ironically, will probably be the most exempt because they still have money in the bank. But the wealth of the world has shifted from the west to the east. The European nations are overly socialistic and overspent in debt, as well as we in the United States. But in the Far East, they have accepted different methods, and they're more in the banking business, where we spend billions and billions of dollars invading these countries to protect our oil and have an influence and spread our goodness around the world. Guess what? China's taking that money and they're investing over there. They're investing and making deals with people in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, in Iran, and all these places. We have literally, with our foreign policy, helped the Chinese because we aggravate people, we spend money, we go broke, and we push them into the arms of the Chinese. So Iraq is going to be closer to Iran than ever before. The Iranians and Iraq will move toward China, as is Pakistan. So all of this have ramifications, the foreign policy, the monetary policy, and the spending policy. I emphasize over and over again that we have to cut back spending. We need to get a system back, once again, where the people have a chance to earn a living and have a right to keep what you earn, and you make the decisions. Not only about your personal life and all your personal decisions, but you get a chance to make a decision about how your money is going to be spent. Because there is not only a huge need for a change, it's a huge opportunity. Because for so long we have been taught in this country that we can solve any problem by more government, more spending, and more borrowing, and more inflation. And that's coming to an end. That's what this financial crisis is telling us. It's coming to an end. We're shifting away. Socialism was proved to be a failure in the 20th century, as the communism failed and other total socialized societies totally failed, because they do not have a pricing structure. Without a pricing structure, the businessman doesn't know what to do. And without the pricing of interest and the money, which is another destruction, and we have been following that for so long. So that is gone, and so interventionism, Keynesianism, welfareism, inflationism, it's proven to be a failure. But the big thing up for grabs, whether you look at the struggles in Greece today, they describe the struggles in Greece as the anarchists against the communists. On Wall Street, I think there's a true battle going on how to solve this problem of the transfer of wealth from the middle class to the wealthy. But if we include everybody who is wealthy as being part of the problem, it will make our problems that much worse. We have to identify those who have become wealthy because they ripped us off. They got the benefits from government. They got the benefits from the Federal Reserve. They got the bailouts. They got the contracts. That is different. So that's a legitimate complaint. But if we say that everybody who's productive will undermine it for all of us, because you want to be able to be rewarded for hard work and effort. So this all is based on a concept of liberty. I believe that liberty comes to us in a natural or God-given way, that we have a right to our life, we have a right to our liberty, we should have a right to spend our money, we should have a right to run our lives as we see fit, even though there may be risk. Of course, we accept the idea that some people think how we deal with our spiritual life may be risky too, but we don't use force to tell people what they do with their spiritual life. We don't tell people what we can do with their intellectual life. We don't say that you're not allowed to study socialism and welfareism, no. But so often we have accepted this notion that we can tell people what to do with their own bodies. And I think if you have a consistent position on liberty, you defend both economic liberty and personal liberty. And if we do that, we can restore, the greatness which was once ours in this country, because we were the freest and the most prosperous. So all we need to do is look to our past, make improvements on the past, whether it's monetary understanding of liberty. I think we can become productive again rather rapidly. But if we make the wrong turn and say what many are saying in Washington and what they're doing so far in these last 4 years, it's always been more of the same thing that caused our crisis. So I am fighting for the cause of liberty, believing sincerely that if we preserve our liberties and preserve our rights to run our own lives and spend our own money, we can be the safest, the most peaceful country and the most prosperous in the world.
Very nice, thank you, that's terrific. I know we're all concerned about the direction America's headed, and in spite of our concern, what an optimistic and hopeful message this is for America's future.
Yeah!
At this point, we have just a little bit of time for some Q&A from the audience. What we're going to do is, you'll have to raise your hand if you have a question. Mr. Benton will approach you with the microphone, and you can please get to a question, give your name and maybe what town you're from, and Dr. Paul will answer a few questions now. Yep.
Good morning, President Sunshine. We would like you to shine a little angle about the Agenda 21 that has been signed by Clinton, by Bush, and right now is being implemented everywhere in the U.S., which is terrorizing our personal freedom, taking our property, and so forth. I'm trying to work on it to unveil the deceiving skills that they're trying to turn the country into communist.
This is the UN? Agenda 21. She's talking about the Agenda 21 under the UN, which would undermine our personal liberties, our personal property rights, undermine our sovereignty. I'll tell you what, there's a lot of threats coming from the United Nations these days. For instance, our president doesn't come to the Congress of the people to go into Uganda and Libya. He goes to NATO as well as United Nations. So they do it. They do it under education and under property rights, and they are indeed a threat. Matter of fact, the UN and the IMF are doing the planning right now for a new currency. They know what we know, that the currency is not going to continue, but they're not looking toward our Constitution and sound money. They want to control the next fiat currency. But very simply, all these problems can be taken care of with the passage of a bill that I've introduced every term as long as I've been there, essentially, and that is that we don't need to be in the United Nations. We need to be...
Okay. Good morning, Dr. Paul. Thanks for coming. My name's Scott Edwards. I live here in Des Moines. And I believe my wife and I school our children for about $200 a year apiece. So 1,000 is pretty high. We'd love to have 17,000, though. I'll get on to my question. I was at the debate up in Ames, and I saw Mr. Santorum answer a question on states' rights. And I'll try and quote him. I believe that he said that the federal government has the ability to trump states' rights because states don't always make the right decisions. So I pulled out my pocket constitution you'd given me and read about it. What would you answer on that? Because I have some friends that are Republicans that are still stating that the federal government should trump states' rights. What do you feel about that?
Well, he's completely wrong, but he's right in one half of it. The states can make mistakes. And the founders understood this, because if the people of Iowa make a mistake, the people of Texas don't have to suffer. And that was the whole point. But if you defer to the federal government and say that federal law always trumps, then when those individuals in Washington or our Supreme Court makes a mistake, everybody suffers. For instance, we deferred to the Supreme Court to deal with the issue of abortion, and that was, the abortion issue, as far as I'm concerned, is a state's issue to deal with it. And the more complex the issue, the more we really need diversity among the states. So, no, I think he's completely wrong, but it is a very traditional liberal viewpoint that the federal government always trumps. They believe in bigger government. The one defect on this is if you follow that we should defer to the next level of government for various reasons, whether it is abortion or gun rights or whatever, then the logic is because they're deferring to international government for the issues of war and welfare and monetary issues, which they are. I mean, the World Bank is the welfare issue. If we do that, that means someday, matter of fact, day is here, that the world government trumps our federal government, and that's why the more local the government, the better. So even when states make a mistake, I think it's very clear. The Constitution is very clear on those authorities that they have. Article 1, Section 8 tells you what can be done. And like I mentioned on the education issue, if that's what the people want, we have to have enough respect for the rule of law to change it. But just to say that federal law trumps, a very dangerous idea.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Dr. Paul. I have a small